Nuclear hellfire rained upon the Vorta colony world, scouring its continents and boiling its oceans, as alien screams of horror echoed from cities and outposts, now reduced to radioactive ash. Mere hours prior, the Vorta had been smug in their supremacy, mocking humanity's primitive arsenal. But now, as Rigel watched the mushroom clouds unfurl across his viewscreen, the commander's mirth turned to ashes in his mouth. "This cannot be," he whispered. "They were relics, antiques." Bruce, the lone human on the bridge, stood resolute, blood trickling from his lip. "Never underestimate our relics," he rasped. The once pristine command deck now resembled a war zone. Vorta guards lay strewn about, necks snapped or skulls staved in. Rigel himself sported a blackened eye and fractured arm, courtesy of the helpless captive he'd been tormenting mere minutes before. This was not how first contact was supposed to unfold. For weeks, the Vorta Dominion had waged a blitzkrieg across human space, their sleek ships and beam weapons overwhelming colony after colony. Earth's retaliation fleet was a generation behind, hurling slugs and missiles against the Vorta's shields to no avail. Even as the Dominion seized the Kuiper Belt outposts and moved in-system, Terran commanders exuded confidence. A bluff, they scoffed at the Vorta's ultimatums. "Empty posturing," they sneered. But Bruce knew better. He'd seen the fear in his fellow captives' eyes before Rigel's interrogators liquefied their brains. He'd heard the tremor in Admiral Havelock's final broadcast from Titan base before it went dark. And now, as the Vorta flagship loomed over Earth, he knew that only the unthinkable could avert humanity's extinction. "All right," Rigel snarled, his face a rictus of pain and rage. "A ceasefire, you have your damned ceasefire." But Bruce's aim never wavered from the commander's skull. "No, you had your chance." His thumb caressed the transmitter's trigger. "You wanted our defense codes?" His lips twisted in a smile devoid of mirth. "Here's the only one that matters." Rigel's eyes widened as Bruce uttered the words that would damn them all. Samson Protocol. And then the nukes fell. The ceasefire between Earth and the Vorta was about as fragile as an eggshell. It broke the instant the dust had settled from the nuclear salvo. Bruce was back on his feet in days, still aching from his interrogation aboard the alien flagship, but refusing to lie in a hospital bed while there was a war to win. The instant he was discharged, he was summoned before the United Earth Defense Council. They had a mission for him, one that could buy precious time. "Commander Kennedy, we need you to lead a covert strike team deep into Vorta space," Admiral Sanderson said. "Your objective is to cripple their war machine, sabotage shipyards, munitions plants, whatever you can hit." Bruce nodded. "We'll buy you that time, sir, whatever it takes." Light years away, a seething Rigel stood before his own superiors, enduring their furious reprimands for his failure at Earth. The Overseer's holographic eyes glowered at him from the chamber walls. "So you assured us of their capitulation," the central image accused. "Yet now their fleets regroup while their worlds remain defiant." Rigel's fists clenched, his body trembling with barely restrained rage. "I will set this right," he swore. "By your leave, I will hunt down this Bruce myself. I'll make an example of him that no human will forget." The Overseer considered, then nodded. "See that you do, Commander." And so the game of hunter and prey began anew. Bruce's strike team blazed a path of destruction across Vorta space, turning factories to rubble and leaving flaming shipyards in their wake. But always, Rigel seemed one step behind, dogging their heels. But then came the discovery that changed everything. In the ruins of a research facility, Bruce's hackers uncovered schematics for a Vorta superweapon, a planet killer. Rigel's dreadnought, Bruce realized with cold dread. The bastard's going to use it to deliver this thing to Earth. Time was running out, but Bruce had a plan, a desperate, reckless gambit. His team would hijack Rigel's dreadnought and turn its weapons on the Vorta homeworld, whatever it took to stop this new threat. But Rigel was waiting for them. The moment Bruce's boarding pod breached the dreadnought's hull, the Vorta commander was there, a dozen armored soldiers flanking him. The bridge became a battlefield, consoles sparking and bodies crumpling as human and Vorta clashed. But Bruce would not be denied. Fighting his way to the command console, he input the override codes. "It's over, Rigel," Bruce shouted over the chaos, his finger poised over the trigger. "I'll reduce your homeworld to dust before I let you reach Earth." But Rigel only laughed, a manic, despairing sound. "You fool! The weapon is already on its way." His eyes gleamed with madness and triumph. "So what will it be, hero? Genocide my people to save your own, or doom Earth to spare our worlds?" Bruce's hand shook, indecision warring within him. Millions would die regardless of his choice. The fate of 2 species hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. Bruce's finger hovered over the trigger, the weight of 2 worlds bearing down on his shoulders. Rigel's mocking laughter echoed in his ears, a soundtrack to the impossible choice before him. In that moment, a flash of clarity cut through the chaos. He couldn't do it. He couldn't condemn an entire species for the actions of their leaders. Instead, Bruce aimed the dreadnought's weapons away from the Vorta homeworld and fired. A lance of energy pierced the void, streaking past the planet's atmosphere and detonating in a blinding flash. The shockwave rippled across the sky, a searing reminder of the power at Bruce's fingertips. Spinning to face Rigel, Bruce slammed his fist into the comms panel. "People of the Vorta Dominion," his voice boomed across every frequency. "I am Commander Bruce Kennedy of the United Earth Federation. Your leaders have lied to you." He laid bare the truth of the Vorta's aggression, the unprovoked attacks on human colonies, the development of the planet-killer weapon. Even now, that weapon speeds toward Earth, ready to snuff out billions of lives. Rigel lunged at Bruce, his face contorted with rage. They collided in a tangle of limbs, trading blows across the battle-scarred bridge. Rigel fought with the ferocity of a fanatic, but Bruce's resolve was unbreakable. "For it doesn't have to end this way," Bruce shouted between punches. "We can still choose peace, we can still forge a future together." Across the Vorta Dominion, a stunned populace watched the broadcast in disbelief. Whispers of dissent began to grow, questions of the war's true purpose and the government's motives. On Earth, sirens wailed as the planet-killer entered the system. Defense platforms and ships moved to intercept, throwing themselves against the weapon's impenetrable shielding. One by one, they were swatted aside, the casualties mounting with each failed assault. In a desperate final gambit, a fleet of kamikaze drones breached the weapon's hull, detonating within its reactor core. The resulting explosion lit up the sky, a second sun that seared itself into the memories of all who witnessed it. The planet-killer was no more, but the cost was staggering. Cities lay in ruins, millions dead or dying. Back on the dreadnought, Bruce and Rigel's fight reached its crescendo. Bloodied and battered, Bruce finally gained the upper hand, pinning the Vorta commander beneath him. He raised his fist, ready to end it once and for all. But something stayed his hand. Perhaps it was the weight of the lives already lost, or the realization that more death would only perpetuate the cycle. Bruce lowered his arm, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "No, enough, it ends here." He stood, offering his hand to the fallen Vorta. "We have a chance to be better, to be more than this." Rigel stared at the outstretched hand, a myriad of emotions warring across his face. The choice was his now, just as it had been Bruce's. The future of 2 species hung in the balance. Rigel stared at Bruce's outstretched hand, a thousand thoughts racing through his mind. For a moment he hesitated, the weight of their shared history pressing down on him. Then, slowly, he reached out and grasped Bruce's hand, pulling himself to his feet. "You're right," Rigel said, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "This war has cost us both too much. It's time for a new path." Together, they turned to face the remnants of their crews, humans and Vorta alike staring at them in disbelief. Bruce stepped forward, his voice ringing out across the battle-scarred bridge. "The war is over," he declared, "but the real work begins now. We must forge a new future, one where our species can coexist in peace." It was a fragile hope, but it was a start. As the dreadnought limped back to Earth, Bruce and Rigel began the arduous process of negotiating a lasting treaty between their peoples. Months turned into years, and the scars of war slowly began to heal. But the road to true peace was fraught with challenges. Old hatreds died hard, and there were those on both sides who clung to the past, unwilling to let go of their prejudices. One such figure was Zoran, a Vorta warlord who had risen to power in the chaos following the war. He saw the peace treaty as a betrayal of the Vorta's rightful place in the galaxy and vowed to tear it down. Bruce and Rigel, now uneasy allies, found themselves once again on the front lines, this time leading a joint task force to hunt down Zoran and his extremist followers. The battles were fierce and bloody, with heavy losses on both sides. In a final confrontation on a remote moon, Bruce and Rigel faced off against Zoran and his elite guard. The battle was intense and brutal, with the once bitter rivals now fighting side by side, their bond forged in blood and sacrifice. In a desperate last stand, Bruce confronted Zoran in single combat, their blades clashing in a whirlwind of steel. Zoran was a formidable opponent, his every blow fueled by hatred and fanaticism. "You fool," Zoran snarled, pressing his attack. "Peace between our species is impossible. One must dominate the other to survive." But Bruce refused to yield, his resolve unwavering. "No," he said through gritted teeth. "Cooperation and understanding are the only way forward." They traded blows across the crater-scarred battlefield, neither giving an inch. In the end, it was Bruce who emerged victorious, his blade finding its mark in Zoran's chest. But Zoran had one final card to play. With his last breath, he activated a hidden failsafe within his armor, triggering a massive explosion that engulfed both himself and Bruce. Rigel, witnessing the detonation from afar, felt his heart seize in his chest. He raced to the site of the blast, frantically searching the ruins for any sign of his friend. At last he found Bruce, badly wounded but alive, buried beneath a pile of rubble. Rigel pulled him free, cradling his broken body in his arms. "You did it," Rigel said, his voice thick with emotion. "Zoran is dead, the extremists are finished." Bruce coughed, blood flecking his lips. "But at what cost?" he rasped. "Look around you. Look at what this war has done to our peoples." Rigel followed his gaze, taking in the devastation that stretched out before them. Earth and the Vorta dominion lay in ruins, their populations decimated, their once mighty fleets reduced to scrap. "We have to be better," Bruce said, his voice barely a whisper. "We have to find a way to live together, to build something new from the ashes of the old." Rigel nodded, tears stinging his eyes. "We will," he promised. "No matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it is, we will find a way." In the years that followed, Bruce and Rigel worked tirelessly to rebuild what had been lost. It was a long and difficult road, fraught with setbacks and challenges at every turn. But slowly, painfully, a new world began to take shape, one where humans and Vorta could live and work side by side, their shared history a reminder of the cost of war and the promise of peace. As Bruce looked out over the fledgling cities rising from the ruins of the old, he knew that their journey was far from over. True peace was not an endpoint, but a constant struggle, one that would require sacrifice and understanding from both sides. But for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel a glimmer of hope for a future where his children and Rigels could grow up without the shadow of war hanging over them. It was a fragile hope, but it was a start, and together he and Rigel would see it through no matter the cost. The once bitter enemies, now the closest of friends, stood side by side as the sun rose over a new dawn, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.